It's just, I had a lump in my throat most of the time. It was just such a beautiful film. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I thought we might start, well, we have Nora joining us from Paris. Thank you, Nora, for being up in the middle of the night again, our film curator, Nora Philippe. And it's thanks to Nora that we have Sébastien here with us. She's been wanting to invite him to Colombia for a number of years now. So thank you so much for joining us. I thought we might start by asking Ron Gregg if you want to take off your mask.
Sorry about that. It just becomes part of the accoutrement,
right, exactly.
doesn't it?
So Ron teaches cinema in the School of the Arts, and I thought we might start by just giving you a chance to share some reactions and thoughts about the film.
It's like it's hard to kind of enter a conversation.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful film. I've had the pleasure of not only watching this, but the Lives of Therese, The Invisibles, and Bambi. And I think they're all these beautiful, intimate portraits. And you have found, I think, a way of kind of presenting these biographical films that, beyond the biography are also educational and advocacy films, about the portraits of the characters that you're filming. But there's also something beautiful in the pacing of the film, the sense of those poetic interludes, like we hear, the music that kind of moves into the kind of everyday activities and play, that the family has. And it moves beyond just, a lot of documentaries will have these kind of interludes that normalize them. I mean, take them out of the talking head part of the film for a while. But here there's something that feels transcendent almost, that gives Sasha a kind of agency and a beauty in those interludes. And there's also this one, it's just like you reached your peak from the other films that I've seen, because the patience of long takes of the conversations with the doctor, or the sitting with Sasha, where a lot of other directors would want to edit and kind of take control or create a kind of mood or meaning through the editing and move it forward. If it's an advocacy film, you want it to kind of get to the point, and the point actually is to sit with him quietly at times. And I think that that's the power of this film. I feel like I sit with Sasha and I come into such a place of respect and love. And I don't know how you do that. I mean, there must be, in all of these documentaries I've seen, you spend a lot of time with them to build their confidence. And I'm imagining that it's a very small crew, that sits there with him. It can't be like the bedroom is filled with equipment, and people. But there's a trust that you seem to really build, that they relax and they kind of move out of performing for the camera, and move into a kind of expression of their kind of interiority, and not only, what they're experiencing, but a kind of affect, So that's my kind of initial response. This is the second time I've seen the film, and I'm probably as destroyed by it the second time as I was the first time. Just again, at the beauty and a sense of having a better understanding of a trans child, that I probably have never encountered except for a couple of minutes, ever. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your words.
Maybe we can pick up from there and just ask you to tell us how you met Sasha and her family, and when we were talking about Thérèse, we had a discussion about is there a kind of contract that's established with the character in a film like that? So, how did you talk with them about about this film? What was the understanding of their role? You know, what was the kind of contract or agreement you had with them going into the shooting of the film?
Well, I remember the first time when I met the mother of Sasha, Karine. She was exactly like in the film. She was very intense, very emotional, very sincere, and I really loved her at the first sight. You know, there was something between her and me that was quite special, because I think for like some years she was totally alone with this situation. What you have to understand that in France, when you have a trans kid, you have no institution, you have no help, and especially if you live in the province, you're just completely lost. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to answer to your kid. You don't know if what you authorize or the way you are going to talk to your kid is right or not. And when I met them, Sasha was 7, and since her 3 years old, she was saying that she was a little girl. So for like 4 years, the mother of Sasha was like struggling with this situation without any knowledge. And so she was quite lost when I met her for the first time. And this is what I felt, you know, I felt this kind of very emotional person, but also for the first time, she was facing someone that could understand her, because I wasn't judging her. I wasn't look at her like a kind of weird person. And of course, I cannot talk for her, so I didn't know exactly what she felt about me, but for sure there was something of trust between her and me that came immediately, and I was very, very deeply touched by her. And so she said, after this first meeting, she said to me, okay, in 2 weeks, if you're okay, you can come in my house and I will introduce you to the whole family. So you will meet Sasha and you will meet all my kids and my husband. And I remember it was a day during winter, and it was for a cake party. And Sasha was very shy. She was hiding herself behind her mother. She was like a wild cat, a little bit scared. And but I didn't do anything, Joe. I just sat there and wait. And
Did you go were you there by yourself?
yes, and with my assistant. And we were together, and the family was so warm. And I had this impression, it was very strong. I could feel the love. It could be very naive to say that like that, but it was really true, actually. There was something going on in the living room between all of these people, the way they bound to each other, and was quite really special. I felt I was in a kind of fairy tale of Walt Disney, you know. I mean, they were like old blondes, blue eyes, this very pale skin, and this love, you know, surrounding them. And it was really special. And I don't know, I was just amazed, you know, by this atmosphere. And then I realized that probably this, because normally when you have a house full of kids, because there were 4 kids.
Yeah.
Normally, I mean, in a normal house, I mean, you can hear, you know, the crying, the shouting, you know, everything like that, you know, the rivalry between brothers and sisters. But it was the absolute opposite. But then I realized that probably the brothers and sisters of Sasha were protecting her for years. So they have built a kind of shield around her. And probably that's why you could feel that love and protection, because Sasha needed it, you know, and so they were very protective and caring. So for me, I was really totally amazed, just to meet them and to see that. And so the thing that I said to them was very simple, and I said, of course, that I was so pleased, to meet them. But the question of the film was a question for me, but also a question for them. And I didn't know if they were capable to be to act normally in front of a camera and to please. I mean, to be pleased, to be filmed, and that could be something nice for them. And they didn't know themselves, So I said to them that we could just make a try for one day, and we will see, how it goes, and we will decide all together, if something is possible as a documentary. And I remember the first day of the shooting actually is in the film. It's the very beginning of the film, and I don't know, there was something so obvious that something was possible. And so we said yes to each other, like in a minute.
Can I just to back up a little bit, how did you find the family?
I found them, well, the thing is, I was very naive first, because I thought that it would be easy to go just to meet an association and just to ask them, how do you may know a family with a trans kid, or even to go to some schools and to ask them if, of course, it's impossible, because you can't just go in a school and ask like, oh, hello, do you have a trans kid by any chance? So this is just impossible. And so after a few months, I was a bit desperate, and I thought that idea that I have was quite impossible just to make it happen. So, and then I had this idea to go on internet and to see if there was some forum where some parents could exchange, their experience. And that was the case, actually. I found a forum because in France, so as I told you, that there is absolutely quite nothing for trans kids and the families. So some parents have felt the need to create a forum to exchange their experience and to ask questions, and just to help each other, because most of them are really, really lost. And in France, it's just something quite new. People are so ignorant about it. So, and of course, the parents are the first ignorant. They have no idea about what it means, how to deal with it, and how to speak to your kid, what to do. It's something totally new for them. And so I put an annonce there, and the first responses were quite aggressive, because they were afraid that I could do something very voyeur, something spectacular, and so, but I was patient, and I explained, what were my intentions, and why I wanted to do that film and how important it was to do it. And little by little, I had two answers: one mother from Canada and the mother of Sasha.
Oh.
So I was very lucky in a way, because the first two answers were very interesting, because the mother in Canada was actually a very nice person, very fun. She said, come to Canada, this is great here, this is the paradise for all the trans people. I mean, at school there is absolutely no problem. We understand totally the question and what it means, But I was looking for someone in France, so I said no.
I have to say that the way that you described the family when you first met them, that comes across in the film so beautifully. I mean, they're a remarkably loving and supportive family, and the attitude of the father, that it's not even a question for him, that this is my child. The brother, I mean, just to see the interactions among the children and
the maturity.
And the maturity. Yes. There's a kind of, maturity and wisdom, and just it's not a question of tolerance. It's just a sort of boundless love that you see them express towards her and towards each other. It's really remarkable.
No, I love when the son says, "Go get him, Mom."
Yeah.
Basically, you're doing what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah, but I think it's tough also for them because they know that they are not the priority,
Mhm.
and they have to deal with that.
The siblings, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they have to deal with this, and it's quite remarkable that they understand it. It's still painful for them. It doesn't take away the pain, and sometimes they want to be in the center of the attention of the mother, but they understand that it's not really possible all the time, and very few time actually. And because they can see that how difficult it is for Sasha, especially at school, which is the place where a kid is going every day, and where you build yourself, where you build your identity, where you learn, where you interact with other people. And this is kind of reduction of the society, so that place is so special, so important for a kid, especially at that age. And could you imagine just to have a life where every day you go to school and you're just scared to go there, and you're not able to be yourself? So, and they know that. So they try to help as much as they can, Sasha.
Maybe we should
Nora?
invite Nora into the conversation and to see if there's a question you'd like to ask, or maybe some remarks you'd like to share.
Yes, thank you very much. I have a question, and good evening to all. So thank you again, Sébastien, for being with us. I have a question about la mise en scène, about the staging and how you conceived your film in terms of cinema. Did you opt for interviews from the start? Was the question of words and analysis something as a priority, or was it more about immersion, cinéma vérité, and cinéma direct? It's not cinéma de vérité, but cinéma direct. But there's the use in an American context that is synonym. So yes, I was wondering, so how and if you provoked some scenes, and the last branch of my question is the question of the position of the camera. You worked at the level. Your DOP worked at the level of Sasha. So you also, it seems to me that you adapted your viewpoint and the position of the camera to Sasha's viewpoint on the world.
So the beginning was, it's the cinematic aspect of the film. For me, it's always something very important. It's not because you're doing a documentary and you have a subject, let's say, that you have a film. It's not enough. And so I try to bring my aptitudes of a fiction filmmaker into the documentary. I like to mix, to have a kind of hybrid aesthetic into the documentary film that I could do, So, which means when you use a scope format, for example, also the use of the music, the way you edit the film, and of course the way you frame it, all these details are actually very important, because it creates a kind of an incarnation that is very special, which transform this person of the daily life as heroes in a way. It's like, just to use the tools and even the arms of the cinema of fiction. It's a way to glorify in a way, and to treat them in a Romanesque way, and to put them in the center in a way. I mean, the rough material of each scenes are totally like a documentary. It's a documentary. It's real life, but the aesthetic, the form, belongs to the fiction. And I always use this kind of tension in each of my film between these two aesthetics.
Can I just? Nora asked more questions,
It's
and
a
I
bit
want to come back
technical.
to
I'm
them.
sorry, maybe.
But I would really love to follow up on this for a minute. So the idea of, can you give us some specific examples of choices you made that did exactly what you've just described, sort of introduced a Romanesque quality, or presented the character as a kind of hero? So for people who aren't familiar with the tools of the trade, what kinds of choices would you make about framing or lighting or position? Or
well, for example, I like the techniques. For example, I'm not the kind of filmmaker that only are into ideas. So I'm very technical too. So I'm very close to my cinematographer, and when we are in the position of filming, I have a kind of, I'm not the one who get the camera on the shoulder or on the tripod, but I have a little screen attached to the camera, so I can see everything, and I can say something to my cinematographer in his ears to give him some orientation or wishes that I have, how to frame, where to choose the point of view. And but Paul, the cinematographer of the film, knows me very well. We did several films together. He knows the grammar that I like, and he's very intuitive, and he understands we are on the same page. For example, I like what we call to have a centered figure, and because it's something that belongs to the paintings, and it's also to the religious paintings actually, and which brings something. It creates a kind of dramatization, and it put the subject in a way that. This is what I said. I don't like the term glorify, but it brings to the character you're filming a kind of importance in the frame, and so you can relate to the character in a different way. But of course, I'm not systematic. Sometimes I don't like the grammar when you do. I'm sorry, this is very technical.
No, but it's really interesting, actually.
Okay, so I don't like the grammar that normally you use in films, where you do what we say in French. I don't know how to say that in English. Deux tiers, un tiers, which means
in thirds, when you're using
in thirds. So you have 2/3 and 1/3. And most of the time, the way you frame a character, this is the grammar that you learn at school. People say to you, it's a kind of use, or that you put the emptiness that size and the rest that volume, and I don't like that. So sometimes, and I don't respect it, and my influence comes more from the paintings and photography and these kind of things. But I'm not the only one to do this. Many directors use this kind of grammar. The way you frame, but it's not the only thing. It's also the question of the point of view. For example, I don't like that the point of view of a person that you're filming is too much up, or so we say plongé, or contre-plongé. So I like to be really at the level of the person, to create a kind of equality. Because sometimes when you have a kind of surplomb.
What's it called? The plongé.
The bird's eye view?
Okay.
Or
well, not so much from above,
angle.
but from looking down at this angle.
Yeah.
Just high angle, low angle.
A high angle. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Because if you do that, it means that you are you're not with them.
Yeah.
Because my question was always not to create a kind of objective and distant point of view, but to be with them, and really to be as close as I can, just to create a kind of subjective point of view and to get the feeling of their inner life, and to be really connected with their emotions and to understand as much as I can, you know, what they feel and what's going on with them, you know. So I'm not at all the maker with documentary that is looking for a kind of objective distance to tell a story. That's absolutely not, I'm not against, you know, but this is not how I do films. I try always to be as close as I can.
As you talk,
Which is a kind of fictional point of view.
yeah, as you talk, I'm thinking of the filmmaker Ozu, Japanese filmmaker, because he moves the camera down if the family is sitting around the table, he moves the camera down and sits with them, or pulls you into that kind of intimate space. But he also has those beautiful pillow shots that are like your interlude shots, you know, between the kind of talking head moments that you move into the poetic, and then you move back into story. So it seems very similar to that.
But I'm not dogmatic, you know. For example,
yes.
Wiseman is a person that is using the distance and let's say the length of the shot to create a meaning.
Yes.
And to get something. And I totally like that, you know. I mean, in his films, it works very well, you know. But this is not what I have chosen for myself, you know, because probably of the story, probably because of the narrative that I'm into, and the narratives of Wiseman are so different, you know. Is into institutions, and he wants just to see how institutions are working most of the time. Hospital, universities, museums, you know, this kind of thing. So, and me, I'm more a kind of someone who's doing portrait, like a photographer. So my meaning and my interests are more into people, specific people, and I try to portray them. So, and I don't want to see them and to be connected to them like if they were like insects, and that I can observe and, you know, with a distance,
I follow.
and to get some and to become someone who's going to be clinical.
You know, and it's ironic, of course, that we never go into the institutions. The only institution is just the doctor. And we don't even really visit the other doctors that they visit with, or even the one-on-one. But that's the only institution that we really get involved with. So it maintains it in the intimacy of the family for most of the film.
Did you I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's just to answer to Noah, is also the question of the talking head was, well, the thing is, I knew that there was a story before I arrived, you know, before I met Sasha, and because Karen has already told me certain things that I thought were very important for the film, and there was no other way to get this information. And because also I really love the way she was talking very sincerely about herself, about her life, what she's been through, before, you know, I arrived with my camera and starting to film the present. So I said to myself, okay, I have to find a way to interview her, but that could fit into the narrative in a way that it's not like too much talking heads. So we did it in the living room, and the colors of the living room, you know, this blue-gray you have, and the shadows, there is something, and you feel it's something that it's happening in the present, you know, of the filming, and just like that, you know. It's not a situation of a classic talking heads, I would say.
Yeah, it feels like they're talking to you. I mean, I can feel you behind the camera, and through you to us. So it doesn't feel like an interview per se, as participating in a really intimate conversation. That was the.
Yeah, it's not academic. It's
no.
Yeah.
But I love the framing of Sasha and Mother when they're talking to the doctor.
Yeah.
With a side view of them.
Yes.
But there's something that melts the two together. I mean, that they really are a team, or it kind of strengthens their bond on some level, the way you frame them. And again, the long take, and even waiting patiently for Sasha in her silences, or, you know, hesitancy, and her weeping. I mean, you know, it's such a strong scene. But it, again, I think it's your framing that kind of captures that.
And isn't that an example of she's in the middle of the frame in that shot, right? From the side.
Yeah. And, but, you know, that moment was really special because they were looking for that meeting for years, actually, because they were waiting to see a doctor that could help them and to answer to all their questions that they have for so many months or years. So I remember that Sasha was so focused on the doctor and the mother too, and she was also very connected to her mother because she could feel the pain of her mother. And Sasha, she's not someone who talks a lot. She's just a kid. She has nothing, but she has few words just to express what she feels and what she's living every day. And she's even afraid to say it out loud because she's afraid to create a situation with her mother. You could see sometimes when she look at her mother like that, and she see that her mother is crying, and she feels probably a bit guilty about that. So it's always a bit difficult for her just to say the words. I remember on the scene at one moment, the mother pushed her to say what's going on at school. And Sasha said, well, it's okay, nothing much. And then mother say, don't you remember this? And, you know, because she's so afraid just to say it out loud. Most of the kids that are bullied at school are afraid to say it. They're ashamed, and they also are very afraid of the consequences if they talk. And this is exactly the case of Sasha. So nothing was obvious, and but you could see the concentration of both of them. So the camera was not an issue, you know, and the room was very small. We were really against the wall like that, but they weren't looking. I remember that they had no. It was like we weren't there, you know. This is how I felt.
No self-consciousness about the presence of the camera.
At that moment, I mean, what they shared with the doctor was more important than the dispositif. So that's why they were so focused. And even Sasha, I remember, sometimes she took a Kleenex. Was that a Kleenex?
Kleenex.
A Kleenex. And she moved a little bit like that, and you could see that her eyes could go on the direction of the camera. But even that moment, I can tell you that she didn't see the camera. She was into herself, into her emotion, but it's like if we weren't there.
I want to give you a chance to answer questions in just a moment. Maybe I'll let
okay
Ron.
With my English?
I'm sorry?
It's okay with my English?
Yes. Sorry.
Would you like to ask?
Maybe the only other question I had right now, I was thinking about the reception of the film, and it showed on French television. I could imagine a range of responses. I suspect that some conservatives were upset by the film, that they don't accept, you know, trans identity, that Sasha should still be a boy. But I was also curious if there wasn't trans scholars or activists that were also not, you know, I don't know how to place it because it's such a beautiful film, and I feel like they had to embrace how warm this family is in Sasha. But on some level, the positioning of a binary gender system without trans allowing the fluidity And I wondered if there wasn't some critique of the film from that perspective.
Well, the reception of the film was very surprising, actually, because I didn't expect anything. I thought that it was a art house film and probably that few people would watch it. And but then, well, we went to Berlin first to show the film at the festival, and already there something happened. There was like, I think, 6 screenings in a huge room, like 500, 600 people, and all the screenings were totally sold out, full, and there was a kind of wave of emotions, every time. So I said to myself, oh, okay, something it's happening, I don't know how to understand that. And then we came back to France, and the film was broadcast on TV, on Arte. And Arte, it's a kind of small TV channel. It's like PBS in America. And but then they had a huge audience that night. Like, I mean, the whole thing probably between 3 and 4 million, which is for a documentary in France really a lot. And so we could see that probably something happened with the film, that I'm still processing it, but probably I think the new generation were really interesting in that story, because it was probably for the first time that you could see such young kid in this question, of trans identity, because most of the time when you have a trans character in a film, it's a teenager or a young adult, but you've never see such a young kid in a future or in this kind of documentary. So, and I know from Arte that the audience were very diverse. I mean, in terms of age or and geography, and so it was really amazing just to see the curiosity and the emotions of the people. And so, and in the social media also, there was a lot of there were a lot of comments, and most of the people were very moved, and probably for the first time they have experienced and understood something about trans identity, because most of them were ignorant and didn't know anything about it, so it was probably a kind of first time, that they could be related to such person. And some critics happened, but in a very specific context, because the thing is, like in America, I guess, trans identity and gender questions are a bit everywhere in the media since like 4 years, something about like 4 or 5 years in the French media. And I think now we are in a kind of peak of it. And probably some people, conventional or how do you say that? Conservative people are just so annoyed, by this, and they're so against it. So probably Little Girl was a kind of, that was too much. That's what, because it's about a kid, and and the emotion that you could see everywhere, on social media, on all the reviews, and so some people were very annoyed about that. But my surprise came, but it was, it was really a very small part of it, but my surprise came of the world of the psychiatrist, because that world were very divided. There were the people totally against the film, and another part were totally for the film. And that was actually very interesting, because you could see that there was a kind of very strong debate in the Academy of psychanalysis,
Psychoanalyst.
psychoanalyst, and it was for me very interesting to read some articles, some very violent. I was so surprised to read that from psychiatrists or psychoanalysts. Something for me so conservative, and they didn't understand anything about, I think, the film, and also I think for them the question was not the film in itself, it was more the position of the pedopsychiatrist in the film, and with her answers that she was given, that she was given to the family. And like, for example, some psychiatrists would say that when the mother said, is it because of me? So you could, of course, understand the guilt of the mother.
Right.
And the pedopsychiatrist answered immediately, it has nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And for some psychiatrists, this is impossible to give such an answer like that. The guilt needs to be exploité or needs to be treated and questioned. But the thing is, most of the person, all the parents who has a trans kid ask the same questions. It's very banal. It has nothing to do with Karen. All the parents ask the same questions. Even the parents who has gay kids ask the same question. Is it about me? Did I do something wrong? You know, they want to know. They want to be reassured about that. You know, but for some pedopsychiatrists and psychoanalysts, that question of guilt is very important, and it's a kind of it takes the center of their attention. You know, that was one of the questions. And also the thing is, they don't get that a film, it's a contraction. So for them, when they see the first scene of the first meeting, they think that the notion of time and all the questions that were asked and answered, it's in the film. Of course, it's not.
No, of course.
You know, the meeting was during 1 hour and 30 minutes, and the scene is 10 minutes, the first scene. So for me, this is totally absurd. You can't make any judgment, you know, of the pedopsychiatrist, of the scene in itself, if you don't know how it was made. Even you can ask a question, you know, and to see the whole thing, you know, just to make, just to have an opinion. So that was this kind of you know, of debate, you know, and I was a bit annoyed, but then I said, maybe it's a good thing, because then it created
Yes.
a debate.
Yes.
And so each side can, you know, explain their point of view. So it's interesting.
All right, if anyone has
I'm
a
sorry,
question.
sometimes it's a bit difficult for me
No,
to speak about that in English, you know.
That was wonderful explanation, really.
I want to give the audience a chance to ask questions. If anyone has questions, there are microphones on both aisles. So please make your way towards a microphone if you have a question.
They're very shy
And
at
in the
Columbia.
meantime, we really do want to, okay, Sophie. If you want to take your mask off, we might.
Right.
Yes.
It was such a beautiful movie. Thank you very much. So you said that in France, there's absolutely no help for parents. Has your movie helped start something? Are there, I don't know, more psychologists to deal with that? Are there, you know, what about schools? Have they changed their attitude? I just wanted to know.
I think, no, probably the film has changed little things. I won't have the pretension to say the film was a kind of revolution, and everybody wants to change everything about the education and about teachers, because the thing, you know, that was really for me scandalous about the school of Sasha, these people pretend to have the knowledge and how to raise a child and what to say to a kid, and you know, and they think that they understand everything. The thing is, they don't know anything about that question in particular, and they didn't want to get any information, because I've proposed them, you know, to meet the pedopsychiatrist who could explain to them, you know, what is dysphoria and how to understand it, you know, through different age. But they refused absolutely everything. They were really into their closed position, probably because of their beliefs of any kind, you know, like religious, or because they have a kind of morality that couldn't accept trans identity, and especially with a kid so young, you know. So, but then some politics were quite impressed by the film, and they wanted to change certain things. So let's say there is something that it's starting in France, but I think it's going to take some time.
Another question.
Hi, thank you for your movie. It was really beautiful. And I had a question, like two questions actually. First, why did you choose to make a movie about a child facing trans identity and gender dysphoria? Because it's like two big deals since it concerns a child, a trans child. So yeah, why did you choose to talk about this? And also, what was the impact on Sasha's life after this movie? Because I think it was released like a month or 2 months ago, but it already did like 3 million entries, so it is quite like something. So yeah, what was the impact on Sasha's life and her family's?
Well, the thing is, since I'm doing films, most of my films are, I would say, queer films, but I don't want, you know, to put them in a box, you know. But since I'm doing films, the question of identity, gender, sexuality are into all of my films. So, but a few years ago, I did a film portrait about Bambi. Bambi is one of the first transgender women in France. And I remember during a conversation with her, because like a lot of people, I thought that trans identity would appear during puberty or during the beginning of your sexuality, but of course it has nothing to do with this, but I didn't know. And so I remember that I asked to Bambi that if there was a special moment where she had a kind of revelation, you know, that if there was a very precise moment where she felt that she was the other sex, that she was a woman. And she looked at me and she said, well, absolutely not, you know. As far as I remember, Bambi was born in 1935 in Algeria, in a very small village. And she said to me that as far as she can remember, she always felt that she was a little girl. And then I realized that you could be very young and have this evidence of your identity, that what you feel deep inside you could happen at 3, at 4, at 5, you know. And Bambi has started to go to school at 6, because at that time, that was the beginning, you know, when you go to school. And so she understood at 6, because she had to cut her hair, she had to put out, I mean, to get rid of all the dresses that she had. And then she realized that her family wanted her, you know, to assume that she was a boy, and that was the beginning of her nightmare, you know, for quite some time. But so I thought that it could be from that conversation I had with her, I thought that it could be very interesting to find a very young kid today, and just to film during a year his daily life, and to see how it goes with his family, with his siblings, with his friends, at school, and for me that was something very important to do, because to make people understand that it's something that could happen very at an early age, you know, and sometimes when you speak with some trans person, they say to you that probably they were raised in an environment that was so difficult that they couldn't express when they were very young who they were, and a lot of trans people probably are assuming their identity very late, because the environment around them are so difficult that they censor themselves, you know, for years. And but Sasha, probably because the love that you could see in the family, this kind of unconditional love, probably she felt that she could talk, that it was a possibility for her. But of course, it's not like that in all the family where you have a trans kid. Most of the time, it's conflictual. You have the father or the mother that can't stand it. So no, it's tricky.
And what about the impact on Sasha's life afterwards? And how is she doing by now?
So Sasha now she's 11, and she's on sixième.
Sort of sixth grade.
Sixth grade?
Sixth grade, yeah.
Yeah, sixth grade. And well, Sasha, she's really fine. She's a happy little girl. She's in a school where she is very well accepted. Her identity, it's even not a subject for anybody. And even she was elected as a déléguée of her class.
Yeah. Class representative.
Yes. So, which means that she's popular, and now she has a good life. But I remember when the film was finished, I was very concerned of the broadcast of the film. And I remember the day after, because I knew that she would go to school, and she has lunch at home. So I've called them at noon, and I asked to Karen, the mother, and say, so how was it at school? And she said, no problem. And I said, what do you mean? I mean, nobody said anything? She said, no. There was even one question, no. So, and I was really surprised, you know, of that. It was like, nobody cares. Sasha was Sasha, you know, that day. And like every day. So it wasn't a problem at all. And because, you know, there was during the broadcast of the film, there was a lot of reviews everywhere, and even in the province where they're living, you know. So I was quite scared of that. But now she's fine.
Do you want to come up to the microphone? Did you ask?
Oh, and there is something maybe I could say,
sure.
which I think is interesting. And also the mother of Sasha said to me, you know, that Sasha, during the film, Sasha was so focused on all the signs of femininity. The pink, all the girly toys, you know, the
backpack.
The bag, yeah, all,
Right.
I mean, all of it. But then after the film, when she was accepted in the school, then she was not so obsessed and focused, you know, on all this sign of femininity. And even she has accepted to wear blue and to play football, and all the things that could be for her a bit dangerous, because but she wasn't afraid anymore, and so she was more fluid, and in the acceptation that she could wear a blue, but she's still a girl. It's not a problem, she was more relaxed about all of this.
And she could wear tennis shoes when she's playing soccer.
Yeah. Well, she had a passion for these shoes of
Those little glittery shoes,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
We have another question.
Yes, so thank you for this wonderful film. So I find this idea of this blend of documentary and cinematic aspects very interesting. So I was wondering if you found it a bit of a risk when you do that you might somehow compromise the sincerity or the spontaneity of the documentary aspect of the film. So I was having in mind, for 2 examples. So for example, there was this scene where Sasha's mother was sitting alone on the stairs or a balcony or something, and she was smoking and she was sad. And I felt like the psychological effect comes from the fact that we're seeing her being alone. But of course, she was not alone. She was with the camera. And another example is when Sasha was lying on the bed with her head over the edge, and she was also being sad or being moody or being reflective or something. She was looking at somewhere along the general line of the lens, but not exactly into the camera. So I was wondering, do you think the presence of the camera affects how people behave in the scene, if that makes sense? And if so, did you take any measures to minimize that? Or actually, I find Sasha quite natural and spontaneous in her reactions, and is really wonderful. But I wonder if that came naturally, or did you do something to make that happen?
No, it's very interesting, actually. When you do a documentary film, I think people are always a kind of fantasy to offer you the person that they are dreaming of themselves. This is their first intention, most of the time. But, and of course, when you film them, you have to let it go. You have to let them express that, to offer you what they want to offer you first. But then, if you're patient, people can't act all the time someone that they're not. So little by little, the reality of them is coming back. So it's just a question of time and trust. But I remember when I did, for example, a movie called Adolescence, these 2 girls that I was filming for 5 years, especially Anaïs, one of them, was so into series, and films. So every time when because I used to film them, like 2-3 days a month. So every time when I was coming back, the first hours of the filming, she was like playing a character. With the hair like that, and and some sentences that comes from I don't know where, but I remember I didn't say anything, and then after like 2 hours, she was exhausted, and then the daily life, would come by because your mom just asks you to lay the table, or I don't know, to watch the kids or to do something, and then it was Anaïs again, So it's just for me a question of patience. And for the precise question that you asked me about Karine, it's when she's sitting on the stairs smoking a cigarette, actually she's not sad, she's very nervous, because it's a moment where she doesn't know what's going on at school. And the fight was like there was a kind of increasement, escalation between her and the school about Sasha. So she was really a bit moody, of course, but she was more nervous and anxious, and the smoke was you know, I didn't ask her to smoke, you know, she was smoking like that, you know. And so I saw that, you know, she was just seated there, you know, and I thought that it could be just interesting just to film her just like that, you know. But to answer about Sasha precisely about what she said, actually there was something that happened that was for me very important. And one day at the beginning of the filming, I asked Sasha if I could go to her room to film her playing with her toys. And I knew that her room was a special place for her because nobody knew her room, because it was a girly room full of dolls and butterflies. And I remember that she looked at me, and for like, I don't know, a few seconds, she was thinking, and she said, well, okay. And so we went there, and I've prepared the camera. And then I said to her, okay, we're ready. And she just sat there on her bed, making no movement, doing nothing. So I was a bit surprised, and I said to her, don't you want to play with your toys? And she said to me, yes, but normally when I play with my toys, I'm alone. And I said, yes, I know, but you know, I'm supposed to make a film, you know, about you. And so maybe you can pretend to play with your toys. And just to act like if I'm not there. And she said to me, yes, but you're there. And I said, yes, okay, but don't you want to do it? And she said, no. And so I was a bit pissed, you know, in the moment. And I don't know, after a few minutes, I said to myself, well, this is really smart, actually, because it was a way for her to say to me that she didn't want to act for the camera. She didn't want, you know, to be a kind of puppet, you know, that will obey to my wishes. And if I had to film her, it has to be in the moment, because she was doing already something, but she wouldn't do something that I asked her. So for me, it was a kind of guarantee that Sasha wouldn't do anything for the film, you know. And so it was very important. And that moment that you're talking about, when she's playing on her bed, putting her head upside down, well, actually what happened is that I was preparing the camera to film her. And then she was doing this, you know, on her bed. And my cinematographer just, you know, kicked me like that, you know, and said, look, this is beautiful. And so we put the camera on, but without telling anything to her. And then after a few moments, you see, because it's in the shot, she realized that we are filming. She could have said something like, are you filming, or what's going on, or something like that, you know, but she didn't say anything. She understood perfectly the situation, and she just looked into the lens of the camera, saying, I know what you're doing, I know what you're filming, and it's fine, you know, I'm okay. And that was, you know, for me, the expression of the consciousness of Sasha. You know, she was very mature, and she understood very well what's going on, you know, with the film and her into the film.
Very interesting. I feel like we should probably wrap things up. I just want, Nora, do you want to have one last short question to Sébastien that you're dying to ask that you feel like we haven't covered, just to wrap things up?
I felt mass parenthesis actually, and I think that it would end on Sasha's agency, let's say. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this film, and for being here with us for these 2 evenings. It's really been very, very special. And so thank you so much.
Thank you.